Story 1. I am the only one who has avoided addiction issues, graduated high school, and attended university. I am also the only one who has ever worked a regular job. The funny part is that I still haven't had an easy road, and I don't think most people would say I have a great life. However, I believe that many people may not recognize that upward social mobility has many barriers. Wherever I end up, I am proud of the effort I put in, even if the rewards aren't that great. Story 2. Because I learned I have a voice and finally learned to stand up for myself. People don't seem to appreciate that. Story 3. Born prematurely at 23 weeks and 2 days, I was not expected to survive. My parents never smiled when I was born because they believed there was no point if I was just going to die. Since my birth, they have consistently redirected their stress and anger towards me, blaming me for many things. They gave up on me long ago. My sibling is the child who meets all expectations, having been born healthy with no issues, while I am viewed as the failure. Story 4. Because I don't enjoy the things they usually find interesting and exciting. Story 5. My dad went to prison for murder, and in my mom's family of chief executive officers and very successful businessmen, I was harshly judged for being my father's child. I still don't talk to that side of the family. Story 6. I was the youngest child of a narcissistic mother. When she died, it felt like everyone suddenly came forward to offer help, and I found myself frustrated with almost all of them. I often wondered where they were when I actually needed support, especially the family members who took in my older brothers when she kicked them out. Nobody appreciated that except my dad, who had tried to help despite living 12 hours away. Story 7. Currently, I am the only one in my immediate family without an issue with alcohol, and I hope to not be the only one permanently. Story 8. Parents neglected us. My brother became a narcissist. Our extended family was kept close by our grandparents and great aunts and uncles. After my grandparents, great aunts, uncles, and father passed away, my mother has been distant, and I haven't spoken to my brother in many years. I escaped this chaotic situation when I was 17 and have had limited contact since. I am too outspoken to pretend everything was fine. Story 9. I am the youngest of 10, with 8 to 21 years between me and my older siblings. I called out the abuse happening around me and refused to sweep things under the rug. I stood up for myself. The final straw was when my brother-in-law, who was drunk, picked a fight and then threw a drink in my face at a wedding because I didn't agree with him. I was told I would never receive an apology, and life is short. Just get over it. Story 10. I am adopted. Just kidding. They have never treated me differently because we are not biologically related. I visually stand out because I do not look like them. We come from different ethnic backgrounds. Story 11. If I speak, they shut me up. If I ask, they ignore me. That's how I became the odd one who doesn't seem to be talkative anymore. Story 12. I wasn't okay with neglect and abuse when I was older. Calling out my parents' preferential treatment of my sister didn't help me either. Story 13. Because I was raised by different people for part of my life, I never really had a stable home in the traditional sense. Story 14. I am the half-sibling. My father abandoned me, and I ended up being the most sane and successful one. They all resent me for that. Story 15. My thoughts and ideas tend to be unconventional, and my common sense is somewhat lacking. Story 16. I stand up for myself and others and try to speak up when I see something wrong. My family does not like people who go against the norm, even when it is in the name of stopping something harmful. Story 17. I am the only college dropout on my dad's side. Everyone else has at least a bachelor's degree. Most have a master's or higher. Story 18. It is hard to define my family, as we all had different biological fathers and subfamilies. With my biological father and grandparents, I was the child they pretended never existed. They never visited, called, or acknowledged my existence. I still haven't met my grandparents if they are still alive, but after 43 years, I would wager they do not want to hear from me. He went on to start a new family that had the opportunities for college funds and a place to live during their teenage years. In an email, after I contacted him and expressed my feelings about our relationship, he mentioned how his family made care packages for the homeless every year at Christmas. I thought, maybe when I was homeless at 13, living in a tent, he could have sent one my way. Story 19. Because I have better critical thinking skills, I noticed that some people are prone to stereotyping, labeling everything they do not understand as negative, and living in a narrow-minded world. Additionally, their conflict resolution skills are inadequate. They seem to thrive on conflict and reconnecting each time they have a reunion. Story 20. Because I have Asperger's and used to cry loudly until I was 14, and because I didn't go to college and have no job at 22, I feel like I am the only one of my generation they have given up on. Story 21. Because I am consciously trying to break the cycle of abuse, and I am succeeding. You know what? Not abusing my child is very easy. Story 22. On my dad's side, I am the only one with tattoos and a piercing. On my mom's side, I am the only one who ever attended or graduated from college among the grandkids. On both sides, I am the only one who grew up in Seattle and the only one to join the military among the grandkids. Story 23. Developed opinions while everyone else moved on with new families, and somehow blamed me when it fell apart. Story 24. My dad was an engineer, and my mom was a medical receptionist. My 3 brothers became engineers, and my sister became a medical laboratory technician. I, the eldest, earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theatrical Design, worked in live theater for a few years, and eventually transitioned into television and then into feature films. After I graduated with my fine arts degree, my entire family spent the next 45 years laughing at me and waiting for me to fail and come to them for financial support or a place to live. The joke was on them, though. I eventually ended up working on blockbuster features for producers and directors whose names are well known, and I made more money during my career than any 2 of them combined. I had a wonderful time doing it, too. I also retired earlier in life than any of them could, and since then, I spend half the year in my Ocean View Vancouver condo and the other half in my studio just a block from a lovely beach in Mexico. It's true. Revenge really is a dish best enjoyed cold. Story 25. Growing up, I did not have much in common with them. As an adult, I believe in vaccines and science, while many of them do not. As a result, I no longer communicate with some of them. Story 26. Big woman in a very Catholic Polish family. Left the country at the age of 18 to study in London. I also have borderline personality disorder. For them, I have always been too sensitive, emotional, unconventional, and ambitious. Story 27. My dad, along with several of my uncles and cousins, was athletic and participated in sports. Guess who became interested in video games? Story 28. I went through college and became successful. The rest of my family did not graduate high school and spent a lot of their lives in prison. Story 29. Starting around 6 or 7, I always thought for myself. I mostly kept my mouth shut because I am fond of where my teeth are arranged in my mouth. My family exhibited racism, homophobia, and various other biases against people for any reason. I believed it was all absurd, but again, I kept my mouth shut. I am happy to say that my parents have changed their views on racism and homophobia, but they still have a way to go. I always thought that discounting someone for what they are instead of being concerned with who they are was utterly senseless. Story 30. In my immediate family of 7, I am the only one without prescription glasses and the only one not prescribed antidepressants or antipsychotics. Story 31. Erst schwul, dann trans, jetzt lesbisch. Dazu kommen noch meine Hobbys. Schreiben, Spielen, Bogenschießen und allgemeines Nerdtum, mit dem in meiner Familie kaum etwas anzufangen ist. Story 32. After my mom died, I learned that her side of the family was primarily focused on money. All those gatherings, family holidays, and trips growing up were not genuine. I felt close to these people and believed they loved me, but their affection was for money. I decided to cut off all communication and let them go, which really hurt me. It still hurts even 30 years later. I didn't care about any money. In the days following my mom's death, the plotting that took place is what truly caused me pain. Story 33. I feel emotions intensely and I am very expressive about them. I am not afraid to stand out when I want to, and that is what makes me unique. I wouldn't trade my authenticity for anything. Story 34. I was born in an Asian household and I am the only gay person. I am also the smart one, so that might balance things out. Story 35. Because I didn't use any drugs or alcohol. I also didn't speak foolishly, as best as I could manage. Story 36. I could read at 4, though I could barely talk. I had Asperger's long before it was recognized. I was the first to drop out of high school and church. I volunteered for the military in combat arms. I was the first to go to college and the first to almost marry an amazing woman. Story 37. Because I have always been the one with the courage to rise when others stayed silent. The one who dared to protect my peace, defend my boundaries, and break the chains of generational curses. I stood tall for myself when no one else would, and I carry a fire within that refuses to settle for anything less than the life I have always dreamed of. Story 38. I have high intelligence, but I am currently between jobs. This situation often makes me the target of employment jokes, and I take pride in being the black sheep of the family. Story 39. I am the only one in my family who has gone to university or even finished high school. It's pretty wild considering I found out recently that I am dyslexic and have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as well. Despite these challenges, I managed to succeed. Story 40. I'm the person who can't leave things alone and mind my business, which is just a long way of saying I don't tolerate foolishness and manipulation. Story 41. Because I followed a different path, I had mental health struggles that they didn't understand. I was my mother's daughter, and I wasn't interested in the same things. Story 42. So many reasons. Many were not my fault. I have enjoyed holding people accountable and waking them up. Story 43. I was raised Catholic and have never believed cannabis to be a sin. My parents didn't know how to handle that. I lost many freedoms during my teenage years due to my cannabis use. I was in advanced classes, captain of my sports teams, and taught Sunday school. However, occasional cannabis use really helped me. I am simply a different person than my family, and it is disappointing. I want to connect with them. I interact with them and bring my new daughter around, but I never feel like I am with my people. Story 44. Because I told my father-in-law to take his shoes off in our house. Now all 7 of my wife's aunts and uncles, along with their cousins and nephews, think I'm the Antichrist. Story 45. Male only. The only one who needs glasses permanently due to astigmatism. The only one born in the 21st century, now an older generation. The only one with early signs of a neurological disorder, such as ADHD. The only one who is not sociable. Story 46. I approach others as individuals to collaborate with, not as competitors to defeat or objects to exploit. I have been called naive for that. Story 47. I was the youngest. I grew up in the free-spirited 1970s while my older brother and sister grew up in the more conservative 1960s. Story 48. As soon as I could, I left. I didn't want to end up in a dead town, making nothing of myself while surrounded by constant dysfunction. No one in my family has ever left except me. I live across the country now. Story 49. Because I married someone from a different background and enjoy exploring various cultures, I do not adhere to traditional customs. Story 50. I am the oldest of all the children in my family, and I share little to no interests with the adults. I tend to enjoy my own company. Story 51. I had my stepfather investigated for being a pedophile. It turned into a he said, she said situation, so we were told there wasn't enough evidence, but he is a creep. Now the family treats my wife and me as if we did something wrong. Story 52. I gave my time without an agenda and didn't expect to receive monetary compensation for my efforts. I finally stood up for myself after discovering the manipulation against me and walked away. Story 53. Because I questioned belief systems, I found myself in a situation where I discovered a buried secret I was never supposed to know. When you see where your family truly came from and refuse to play along with the distorted reality, you are branded as the problem. Story 54. My father, mother, brother, and sister all have a master's degree in science or engineering. I dropped out of 4 colleges. Story 55. I started a big fire in my house when I was 5, and it nearly caused my whole neighborhood to lose their homes. Story 56. The only one to start a business, the only one to speak out against the elders, the only one to smoke and drink, the first atheist in my entire lineage, and the first to listen to rock music. Story 57. I acted out as a child and was labeled the troublemaker. I won't be able to live down the things I did at the age of 7. Story 58. Not only am I the middle child, but I'm also the smartest in my family and the only one to pass high school with a GPA of over 2.0. Story 59. My family is obsessed with money. They value you based on what you have and what you can give them. I don't care about your possessions. I care about how you treat people. Story 60. Because I refuse to continue the cycle of abuse with my children. Yes, that's strange to some people, and it makes me the black sheep of the family. Story 61. My entire family is devoutly Christian, has been married several times, and has many children. I am a Satanist, choose not to date, and refuse to have children. Story 62. I have 3 sisters and I am the second eldest. Whenever people ask about my siblings, they are often shocked that I am straight and familiar with Barbie, Disney princesses, and even the Winx and Bratz. I was forced to watch these shows because of my 2 younger sisters. Whenever my girlfriend notices that I know about Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses, she always laughs while being confused about how I can recognize those shows. So, yes, the odd one in the family is me, the only guy who is never treated as a guy in our family. Story 63. My mom wanted me to be a Christian, but I didn't appreciate it being forced upon me, so I chose a different path. Story 64. Honestly, I was frequently online from a young age while growing up in a really Southern family. I never developed a Southern accent or dressed the way they did. Not that I was a total outcast. I was just influenced by the internet, so I dressed more like I was from California or New York rather than the Southeast. Story 65. Funky hair colors and unique interests, later diagnosed with ODHD. Before that, it was just borderline personality disorder because attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism were not widely recognized as present in individuals assigned female at birth. Story 66. I was born late when my 2 sisters were young teenagers. They both married in their late teens, which was quite normal in the 1970s. As a result, I found myself a 5-year-old child with parents in their late 40s and no siblings anywhere near my age. It was a lonely childhood, and it has affected my whole life. Story 67. Perché sentivo troppo, sognavo in grande e facevo domande che mettevano tutti a disagio. Non volevo adattarmi, volevo capire. Story 68. I don't use drugs, and before I completely stopped drinking, I would get drunk maybe once or twice a year. Story 69. I am the only one in my family with just a bachelor's degree. My brother has a Doctor of Philosophy degree, and my sister has a master's degree, while both our parents hold Doctor of Philosophy degrees. I am also the only one with biological children, though this is not related to education. Story 70. My mother is a narcissist, and I am autistic. She did not appreciate when I called her out on her behavior because it did not make sense to me logically. When I was old enough to express my displeasure, they kicked me out at the age of 15. In summary, I was the only one willing to stand up to a horrible, emotionally abusive person, and the silence from every other relative was all the sign I needed. Behavior is a language. Story 71. If a family member was being rude to someone, and it was always the same person, I would call them out on it. Additionally, I often spoke my mind and disliked family gatherings. Story 72. I got tattoos in the 1990s before they became popular for women. I am outspoken and not afraid to express my thoughts honestly. Story 73. I can be absent-minded, aggressive, and neurotic, which is completely different from my parents, grandparents, and aunt. However, I am currently on a path to redemption, transforming from the least favored member of the family to the most favored. Story 74. I've waited until my 30s to have children. Most, if not all, of the women in my family have had children at a young age, in their teens or early 20s. Story 75. I am the only male on my mother's side in over a century who is not a commercial fisherman or a criminal. On my father's side, I became disillusioned with Christian rhetoric around the age of 13 and told them I no longer identified as a believer. Years later, I found faith in a higher power again, but in a more neo-Gnostic way. Story 76. I did well in school and continued to persevere until I achieved the success I wanted. Everyone else settled for the first job they found after high school. Additionally, I am in a relationship with a white girl. Story 77. All the women in my family look basically the same. My grandmother had strong genes because all three of her daughters had different fathers, yet they look identical, as do all my female cousins. Except for me, I look like my dad. Story 78. I was born to two parents who already had families. Being in that situation was challenging. Story 79. I found the emails between my father and the woman he was having an affair with on our family computer. I told my mother, and my life became very difficult. This was my sophomore year of high school. He is the head of the family, so no one ever stood up to him. 32. I am content to not have them around anymore. Story 80. I am highly motivated for more in my life. I moved away, earned an advanced degree, and am thriving 1,000 miles from home. I still visit regularly and love my family deeply, but I couldn't thrive there. Story 81. The only redhead with green eyes and a freckle option. The left-handed child of Satan par excellence. A tornado annoying everyone. But I turned out well. I only cast 2 curses a week. Story 82. I was the only child between my parents, and they both remarried and had other children. My mother disliked my father and felt I wasn't black enough or feminine enough. My father, often pressured by my mother, wanted me to be more like him, but I wasn't. My father and I have a good relationship now since he apologized for his past mistakes. However, my mother has passed away. Story 83. Because I am not in prison, not a deviant, and I do not abuse my spouse. I am finding success as the black sheep over here. Story 84. I am the only one in my family who isn't religious and refuses to be indoctrinated back into the church. I constantly remind people that I do not attend church and have no intention of ever doing so. Yet, every Sunday, I receive the same message. We missed you at church today. Story 85. Most of them are neurodivergent and have recently started learning about it. I have been evaluated for a few issues, but somehow all of them were overlooked. Story 86. Being gay, intelligent, well-spoken, and well-dressed in a family of Southern Pentecostals who love Walmart and are ultra-conservative made me feel a bit too different for their taste. Story 87. My mom had me at 39. I was the youngest, while my siblings were already grown adults with a different father. My dad had 2 children from a previous marriage, making me the odd one out. I have no relationships with my siblings, aside from an occasional, "Hey, how are you?" message from my sister on my dad's side. I also have no relationships with any of my cousins, aunts, or uncles. Now, at 32, my siblings are all pushing their late 40s. Story 88. I followed my passions and dreams instead of pursuing what my family considered normal, practical, and responsible for a career. I have no ill feelings toward my family. I simply viewed things differently, and they did what they believed was best for me. Story 89. My mother divorced my father due to his alcohol addiction, lack of employment, and failure to contribute to the household. Core family values and respect were compromised. Family members expected me to emulate him. My mother's relatives even suggested she abandon me and remarry. My grandmother calls me a scorpion, believing I will eventually cause harm. I have 5 cousins, 1 older brother, 3 younger sisters, and 1 younger brother. They all dislike me and refuse to speak to me. I feel completely isolated from my family, both my father's and my mother's side. The only individuals I have are my mother and my dog. My sole goal in life is to never become like my father. Never. Story 90. Many things have shaped my life. My parents are both severely mentally ill, and my father is a drug addict. They lost custody of me at a young age, and I was adopted by my maternal grandmother. I grew up mostly alone with occasional visitation. I never fit in with my mother's new family after she remarried and had more children. The only time she calls is to tell me that someone is out to get her or to express regret about situations that never actually happened. My father and I don't communicate much anymore since I moved away and he fell back into heavy drug use. I had a stronger relationship with him growing up than with my mother, but now I speak to him maybe once every 2 months for about 5 minutes. He usually asks how we are doing and says he'll call back later, but he never does. I have a good relationship with my grandmother. She is the closest thing I have to a parental figure. She feels very emotional about my mother's issues because my mother has created a grudge against her based on false narratives she perpetuates on social media. Since I came out as transgender at around 10 years old, my relationship with my grandmother has changed a bit, but we remain fairly close. She doesn't fully understand me, which is okay because I don't completely understand myself either. Other family members have distanced themselves from me due to my parents' behavior. The only family member I regularly talk to is my aunt, who understands that my parents' issues are not my fault. Despite having many parental figures, I have never felt part of a family. The only real family I have is the one my husband and I have created. I have done many things differently from my parents, which I am proud of. I earned my high school diploma despite dropping out at one point, and I graduated with honors. I've worked since I was 14 and held a stable job until we moved to Florida, which has made things rocky since moving across the country at 18 years old. I got pregnant, thought it was the end of the world, and married a week before my son was born. Now my little guy is 4 months old and is the light of my life, making my existence feel worthwhile. Currently, I don't work, but I am going to school to become a registered nurse. My husband is obtaining his certification in networking. We will be stable, maybe not now or in the next year, but soon. I fit in with my family now, and that's all that matters. Story 91. Yes, because I don't want to get married or become a parent. I had a total hysterectomy as well and am very firm about my decision. Story 92. They are from the Midwest, have narrow views, and were never thrill seekers or travelers. I am the healthiest member of the family, with stories and culinary skills that amaze them. Sometimes, I feel like a celebrity when I visit home because of their lack of cultural awareness. It is unfortunate because I can barely engage in meaningful conversations with any of them. I just nod, smile, and try not to speak as much as I used to. After 24 hours, I want to leave anyway. Story 93. I do not follow family and country traditions, even though everyone does. I also do not believe in overthinking your emotions or being dishonest with yourself. Story 94. My mom has a lot of physical and mental illnesses, so my entire family always catered to her. That's why she and my dad split up as well. I used to go along with it until I started noticing her difficult and overbearing behavior toward her children. She would never provide support but acted as if we owed her something for being born. Naturally, I lost sympathy, stopped catering to her, and even stopped viewing her as a mother. My family doesn't like that and says I should be grateful for what I have. They refuse to see the fact that she is emotionally abusive and manipulative. My entire family has also been in many abusive relationships. And no, I'm not just upset because she needs extra help. She berates me and then blames me for her own faults. Story 95. Because I struggled in school, specifically in math, from first grade until 2 years into fifth grade and continued facing challenges until 12th grade. I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and never received treatment. I experienced suicidal thoughts starting in 6th grade. I was perceived as difficult to raise. My parents did not accept me. Recently, my brother, who is studying psychology, told me, "Stoney, I don't know if you realize this, but you received worse treatment from mom and dad than any of us." He added, "Mom says those things to you because she sees you as a reflection of herself, and if you perform better or appear better, she will put you down." I always felt like the outcast because my parents did not appreciate me, but I have always loved them. Story 96. One day I realized I didn't have to tolerate anyone's disrespect. All my aunts began resenting me, while my uncles started showing me more respect. Story 97. I am the only one in my family who did not have children or get married. Most of my cousins on both sides are female, with only two males, and they use their mother's maiden name as their last name. As a result, our family name is nearing its end on both sides. Most of my cousins had children and got married before turning 20, and now they are all divorced with multiple partners. I did not want to follow that path, so I remain the only one without those experiences. The children they had are now beginning to have their own kids. Story 98. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and early onset of alcohol use disorder. A challenging combination. I disliked authority of any kind. I resorted to violence when provoked. I outgrew my worst behaviors, but... Story 99. I probably wouldn't have been, but I realized I wasn't straight and my family was homophobic, which made me reevaluate everything they taught me over time. Story 100. I am the only one without a Master of Business Administration, but I also hold a master's degree in engineering. I have my own issues, but that is something I can do that they cannot. Story 101. I was the most caring yet depressed person. I felt like the black sheep and was disowned by my aunt when I was 16 due to self-harming. Meanwhile, my sister was drinking underage and using drugs, and everyone favored her. They still do, even though she borrowed money from everyone. Story 102. I am both outgoing and tall. The rest of my family is mostly shy, and 5 feet 10 inches was considered very tall for my family on both sides before I came along. Story 103. There are many sad stories here, with some people believing they are better than others. As for me, I have always had a desire to explore and try different things. Ironically, I believe that my other family members are happier with their lives. Sometimes the happiest place is at home. Story 104. I am autistic, and my cerebellum did not develop properly while growing up, which has resulted in balance and speech issues. Story 105. Because my dad understood that I had more potential to be a star and earn money than my sisters, he wanted to make me a target so it would not be easier for others to take advantage of me when I grew up. Story 106. The middle child is the wild one, the daughter. She is very independent, headstrong, and sometimes rude when it suits her. I've done all right. The boys are okay too, but I'm the unusual one. It's fine. I embrace that. Story 107. I am an atheist. I speak Japanese. I have studied a few other non-Western languages. I did not stay in Appalachia. Story 108. I am the adventurous one. I enjoy traveling and experiencing things outside. All of my family members are homebodies with their PC games, online businesses, and musical instruments. I need to go outside. Story 109. I earned a degree and then another. I got married in 2007 and have not divorced. I do not have any children and have remained in the same career since 2008. No one else has accomplished most of that, let alone all of it. Story 110. I have some mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, a history of eating disorders, and some issues with anger. I have always felt judged by certain relatives. When I finally spoke up to one of them, it fractured my family. For the sake of my mother, I choose to remain silent and live with the shame of feeling misunderstood. Story 111. I was the first to move out. I left home at 17 while my siblings, who are both nearly 22, still live with our parents. Story 112. Because when my mom received her inheritance from my grandmother, I didn't ask for anything despite being unemployed. Everyone else did. Story 113. Being the eldest, I had the most responsibilities and had to teach and provide for my younger siblings. Story 114. I married a smart and attractive woman from a good family. We have 3 children, and none of them have had legal issues. None of them live at home with their parents. They all have undergraduate degrees and are working on master's programs or professional licensing. We live 1,600 miles away from the nearest family member. Story 115. My parents were both the youngest in their families. I am the oldest of 3 children and the only one who has no idea what it is like to have older siblings. My sister, as the middle child, is the only one with both older and younger siblings. Between the five of us, I think I won in that regard. Story 116. My brother and I became infamous early on for not attending gatherings we were invited to. We come from two intense cultures that emphasized large social family gatherings. Very loud and involved. Everyone shows up, even for casual events. If it's a celebration of any kind, they go all out. So not accepting invitations is a significant no-no. One side of the family is particularly intense, and it doesn't help that they often make my brother and me feel unwelcome or unaccepted. This has been the case since childhood, so we naturally drifted away from them. We used to get into a lot of trouble from our dad and his sisters for avoiding these gatherings, but they never recognized how his side of the family affected us. Eventually, they all stopped trying to force us into those situations, and we now live peacefully in our own little world. Story 117. At this point, particularly on my maternal side, I am one of the only ones left alive. Seriously though, it's just me and a few cousins, all women, with no kids and only one living parent. We each basically broke the cycle of our respective branches of the already fractured and withering family tree simply by not being like our mothers. Story 118. If I'm honest, there are many small reasons, but the two main ones are that I want to be educated and I don't want to be a traditional wife. I don't understand it. Story 119. My mother was 15 when she got pregnant by my father, who was 17. Abortion was not an option, so the church arranged for my adoption, and I was adopted by a couple who were unable to have children. My birth parents eventually married, so I have two full families, and many people knew me as the child born out of wedlock to a couple of teenagers and adopted by another couple. They all know my name, while I know maybe about 20 of theirs. Adding to this, I left the church and had a child out of wedlock in my 20s, making me feel like a black sheep. Story 120. First-generation student. My grandparents studied literature and language, my mom studied law, my dad studied finance, and my sister studied marketing. I am studying cognitive neuroscience. Story 121. I didn't attend a prestigious university. I have visible tattoos. I have been arrested. I am not married, and I do not have children. None of my family has met any of my partners, except when I was a teenager living with my mom. Story 122. I tried to execute myself, therefore forsaking my family. They refused to meet my gaze even after a year since that attempt. They did not acknowledge my existence, which led to feelings of rejection and spiraling thoughts that culminated in another attempt. They are also judging each other within their circle of judgment, vanity, superiority, and snobbery. I'm not bitter about my family treating me like a ghost in my darkest times. Why would I expect my family to love me when I felt unloved? Why did I expect them to care about my life? It is not more important than an image. Story 123. I don't follow any form of Christianity. Instead, I identify as a pagan. We didn't have a traditional wedding. We got married by our ordained minister friend while wearing jeans and t-shirts on the back porch. My husband and I didn't have a rushed wedding. We are actually planning our family. I am the only one in my generation reconnecting with my Seahammer heritage, which is from Micronesia. Story 124. I am the only male in my extended family on my mother's side who lives independently, has purchased a new car, traveled abroad, earned a college degree, and speaks a second language, all while being gay. Story 125. My younger siblings did adult things before I did. This year, at 21 years old, I am joining them at festivals like Freak Night and Electric Daisy Carnival. Story 126. Because I live a quiet, simple life and have never been a party person, I guess I'm boring to them. My life is peaceful. Story 127. I am the youngest by 6 years, 14 years younger than my brother. I lived for many years with just my mother and me. I am the quiet one, the introvert. My siblings are outgoing, loud, and the life of the party. I am happy to sit in the corner and watch people. Story 128. I am transgender and I live in a transphobic household, which makes me a significant outlier. Story 129. Because I was born out of wedlock, my stepfather would not acknowledge me as his son. My biological father would acknowledge me but did not want to take on any responsibility. My mother preferred to cater to my stepfather's family. Growing up, my brother and I felt more like parasites than children. Our older siblings received love and warmth, and we could clearly see the difference. Being left at home during family vacations made it difficult not to feel this way. Story 130. I come from a large family of very social people. I used to think of myself as antisocial growing up, although after leaving home, I discovered I was just a moderately introverted person. They get energy from crowds. I tolerate them. Their idea of a great vacation is going with another couple or two and compromising on activities because socializing is the most important aspect. My perfect vacation involves doing and seeing what I want, and if another person is on board with the same activities, that's a bonus. This may sound petty, but they love ordering different meals at a restaurant and sharing them. I dislike that. If I wanted something other than what I ordered, I would have chosen that. They are good people and I enjoy their company in general. We're just not on the same wavelength. Story 131. After a childhood filled with abuse and blame, I turned to drugs and alcohol. The unfulfilled dreams of my parents were placed on my shoulders, eventually leading me to a nervous breakdown. They blamed me for everything. I am now 42 and still live with anxiety and depression. I have tried many forms of therapy, but somehow I remain closed off inside. I have learned to live a normal life, and I am happy with my family, but those nightmares linger. Story 132. My family has blonde hair and blue eyes with many females. I rebelled after falling in love with Siobhan Fahey from Shakespeare's sister at a young age, deciding that goth girls were for me. As a result, I embraced the goth style, and we certainly stood out at family gatherings. Story 133. I'm close with some of my family, but the rest are insincere. They dislike each other, attend family functions, and act like nothing is wrong, then talk negatively about everyone afterward. I can't stand it. Story 134. Parents got divorced because mom was unfaithful to dad. Brother and sister sided with mom and blamed dad for breaking up the family because mom said she was done and ready to change her life. Dad said this was one time too many and ended the relationship. Well, my mom kind of turned brother and sister against dad, who argued that he should not have left her and should have taken her back. Dad said he didn't want to send that message to us kids and had to leave because he was depressed and had started smoking secretly again. He also worked a lot since he became our custodial parent and paid for basically everything. As a result, he wasn't around much for a couple of years. I would go out with my mom, my stepdad, and my siblings, and they acted like a close-knit group. They referred to themselves as us. And when my 11-year-old self referred to us, including myself, I was quickly corrected by everyone that I wasn't part of that us, just a relative. It stayed that way until I became an adult. I'm still closer to my father than my siblings, but those relationships leveled out as adults. Story 135. My dad's family. I identify as queer and not religious. My mom's family. I am one of the few blood-related men and I am not focused on money. Story 136. I gathered the courage and told them to find a new scapegoat. I have seen them a few times in 10 years, and they are still complaining about things I did when I was a child. Thank goodness I left that family. Story 137. I want to be religious. I definitely marched to the beat of my own drum. I was the most independent of my siblings, except for my little big sister, whom I look up to this day. I was the explorer, the curious one, adventurous and determined. Story 138. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and striving for greatness or feeling a calling are a surprisingly common combination that can create challenges for a child. As an adult, people seem much more accepting of who I am. Story 139. I did what was expected by going to college, earning a degree, getting married, and starting a family. When I turned 30, I began doing things that made me happy, such as getting tattoos and piercings, expressing my own opinions, and now I am dating a transgender man. I embrace being the black sheep. Story 140. Pure rage and passion. I didn't care to uphold my parents' standards, which were tied to representation. I was and still am the director of my life. Story 141. Because I was very quiet and read a lot of library books, none of my siblings or my parents did. I also got laid at the age of 13 by an older woman, at a time when nobody at home was getting any. Story 142. Why is the lesbian asexual transgender girl who has autism and ADHD the odd one out? I can't think of any reason. To my knowledge, no one else in my family is queer in any way, but I'm not the only one with autism and ADHD, that's for sure. Story 143. Reasons include feeling less intelligent or less attractive than others, experiencing depression, anxiety, and addiction-related issues, and having low self-esteem. Story 144. My older sister is a malignant narcissist, and my parents catered to her. She never forgave me for being born. Story 145. They are very conservative, close-minded, strict in their religious beliefs, violent and homophobic. I am a closeted pansexual, left religion months ago, and I cry every time someone raises their voice at me. Story 146. I am the one who is a travel enthusiast. Sure, I won't earn as much as my siblings, but it's a life that makes me happy. It's not something my siblings would ever want to turn into a hobby, but they do seem a little jealous of the places I get to visit. Story 147. Because I did not inherit the amnesia. They passed down recipes, routines, and generational ghosts, but I showed up asking why none of them remembered the fire. I was not rebellious. I was awake, and in a family of dreamwalkers that makes you look like the problem. Story 148. Yes, I was reading astrophysics books when I was 12. My parents worked in manual jobs and were confused by my interests. It became a running joke. Story 149. My family hurt me to the point that it no longer affected me, and they shunned me when I began to put my life back together. I fell into my vices, but my ambition motivated me to work harder. As the youngest to marry, I became distant from my children because I didn't want them to be exposed to my family as I was. Story 150. I was abused by my relatives my whole life, specifically my mother. I was always belittled, called the black sheep, and subjected to various insults to undermine me and maintain control. I eventually escaped and cut ties with them. Story 151. My parents divorced, so I was sent to live with my maternal grandparents and grew up with my uncles and aunts from the age of 2. Story 152. I don't really know for sure. I didn't feel significant as a kid, especially not to my extended family. However, as I got older, my younger sister and mother developed a relationship that excluded me, which upset me. I have always wondered if it's because I never had children while she did. They would team up against me from a young age. My mother would say she didn't have to worry about me, but she did. Now, since she's passed away, even my extended family does not speak to me. My sister is very insincere and hasn't really worked much in her life. I have always worked and never really had help while she was given government housing. When my mother passed, my stepfather sold her a car, while I had none, so I had to use public transportation to get to work. I experienced a period of homelessness, and not one family member offered to help me. Not a single one. I remember being heartbroken and shocked. I have never forgotten that and have not forgiven it. My sister forgave our stepfather and remained close to him, even though he took all our mother's money and threw out all her belongings without giving us anything to remember her by. I hated him for that, but she continued to hope for money until he turned against her. I can't believe how much this upset her. She is the only family member I talk to, and she treats her friends like royalty compared to me. My father and she have a better relationship. I once lost it, crying and yelling, asking, "What is it? What have I done that is so wrong that you seem to dislike me so much?" I honestly still can't tell you. They have never helped me. I have always taken care of myself. My sister has so much support. I hurt every day because I still don't know at 45 where I belong. Story 153. Gay, non-religious. I changed my given name and last name as soon as I could. My parents had it easy with my sister. She did what she was expected to do. I rarely did what I was expected to do, unless I had a very good reason for doing it. Story 154. Not me, but my sister. She is the first one born in 60 years of my family whose birth date is not divisible by 5. Story 155. I spoke up against the constant verbal and emotional abuse in my family, and it got so severe that I went into foster care. I am transgender and queer, and my family is generally bigoted. However, I am very close to my dad, who is also considered a black sheep due to a combination of chronic illness and being more open-minded, both of which I also identify with. Story 156. I'm literally the only one who likes to read. My brother, after me, very rarely reads manga or books, unless I insist a lot. He has only read 2 books because of my insistence. My other brother reads out of obligation for college. Other than that, no cousin, uncle, niece, sister, mom, or grandpa shares this interest. So when I want to talk to them about a book I read, the response is always, "That's cool," or "nice." Story 157. I disliked the way my accent sounded as a teenager and thought it made me sound unintelligent. Therefore, I decided to normalize my accent and work to eliminate as many traces of my southern United States accent as possible. All my immediate family have southern accents, but mine resembles the non-regional dialect commonly heard in American movies and television. Story 158. I have several mental illnesses and learning disabilities, or at least I am the only person who has been diagnosed. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.